Hello, Realtors, and welcome back to GADcast, brought to you by the North Shore-Barrington Association of Realtors. My name's Joe Roth, and I'm your Local Government Affairs Director at NSBAR. Before we get to our guest, here are a few local updates from the region. In Niles, trustees passed a vacant and foreclosed property registration ordinance against realtor objections. For properties in foreclosure, lenders will be required to complete registration every 6 months, submit $300 with each registration, and inspect properties every 30 days. Realtors objected to adding financial burden for those trying to modify loans or short sell, as the cost of registration will ultimately hit struggling homeowners. Trustees have yet to approve an agreement with a third party that will administer this program. In Evanston, City Council once again tabled a proposed eviction moratorium that would extend 60 days beyond the governor's proclamation. Proposal would provide tenants a right to remedy while requiring landlords to negotiate settlements in good faith. City Council is expected to act prior to the statewide moratorium expiring. In Northbrook, the Plan Commission is expected to continue affordable housing conversations at their October 20th meeting. The current proposals include mandates on new development, potential development fees, and demolition taxes. Finally, in Lake Bluff, the Historic Preservation Commission is proposing a new approach to historic preservation in the village. This will impact properties more than 50 years old. Discussions are anticipated at the October 14th meeting. Finally, make sure and sign up for Realtor Party mobile alerts. Text the word Realtors to 30644. And now, let's get on with our guest. We're back in studio today with another top-tier guest. He's the representative of the 57th State House District. And for those of you that forget district numbers like I do, that's right here in Northbrook. He's a friend, a great champion for realtors, and just a pleasure to be around. Today we have State Representative Jonathan Carroll. Representative, welcome to GADcast.
Listen, man, you lie more than a politician on that. I mean, my goodness. Well, thank you for that warm introduction, and always happy. I think I always mentioned to you, I'm the son of a realtor, and so I think that coming at this, having a mother that would pound into my head the value of the industry and how much she would always talk about, that she would find the right house for the right person, and really, her last hurrah in the real estate business was my house. Like, she saw it from the curb and she says to me, "This is the house that you and your wife are going to buy." So it's fascinating because it was literally like, we never saw the inside of the house, never saw it, drove by, said, "That's the house you're going to buy." And sure enough, my wife came in and we bought the house. Now, 12 years later, we were still in the same house that my mom picked out for us. So, your industry is such a valuable resource for buyers and sellers in the market, because you know your market, you know what houses are, you know all those things. And I think it's such an important ally that we have. Now, again, I'm not feeding humans to the cannibals here by saying this to you because I'm on a realtor podcast, but you can look it up. My mother was with Caldwell Banker, Martin and Marbury for years in Skokie. So this is not lip service. But in reality, it's a field that should be supported, and it's amazing to me how many people don't realize that you can try to do it by yourself, but you're talking about the biggest investment you're going to make for yourself and your family, and you bring in the people that actually know what they're doing to do those things. So it's a pleasure to have a great relationship with you guys. To always be there to sort of support you in the things that you're doing, and I really appreciate sort of how you've kept the housing market going, especially during the challenging times of COVID. So thank you for that.
Well, thank you for that warm response as well. So how is we hit COVID there? How's COVID life for you?
Let's see. I mean, I always like to talk to people that don't have the last name Carroll. So it's like people want to have a conversation. It's like, hey, all right, cool. We can talk to people. It's scary times for a lot of us. Unfortunately, I mean, I've had 2 exposures, luckily, knock on wood, or that I have not actually caught the Rona. but, I've been exposed twice. The people I know that have had it, it's been really just one of these just scary things because we don't know what it does. We don't know how it impacts people, and we don't know how this ends. So I think it's frightening. But I also think too, is it's like, I've grown to really think of the things in the world that I miss, as you can see behind me, I'm a sports fan, not being able to go to Bears games. I mean, it's like I sit there with my son, we watch here at home. It's, it's nice, but it's not the same thing, or going to a baseball game, a Cubs game, or anything. Just the things that in the past, you'd be like, oh, I didn't go to the Cubs. Somebody offered me tickets. I didn't go. And now you're like, gosh, I wish I would have taken advantage of that, and it's like, so I think it's just the day-to-day stuff that we miss. But, at the same time, just like, honestly, like, I got to tell you, it's one of these situations where you learn to really kind of appreciate what's important to you as well. Like, again, my family, and, the fact that, again, knock on wood, we're all healthy, we're all, we're doing well, we're surviving. And I think that's really what puts all this in perspective, because once you have something taken away from you, you really start to miss it. So it's been tough, and I think it's been really hard on just kids and everyone else, and the interesting part about this is, I think, like, with our governor, Governor Pritzker, I whether you love him or you hate him, whether you think he's the greatest thing in the world or the worst person in the world, I think no one can deny the fact that his efforts have been to try to keep us safe. Now, again, you may not agree with his methods, you may not agree with some of the things that he's done, but I don't think that his efforts are sinister. And it's really troubling when people do that. I mean, he has the data, he has the information, he's trying to stop the spread of this disease because, it's real. And when you talk to people that have it, they go from, oh, this is not that bad, to this is the absolute worst thing I've ever had in my life. So, I think that that's one of the biggest challenges that we face is just that, like, we got to get this thing under control. And just when we think we let our guard down a little bit, we'll see a spike in the numbers immediately thereafter.
Yeah, but I do appreciate your positive response there to, focusing on what's important. It reminds you of what's important. And, I personally, every now and then, I got to remind myself of what's important when the kids are, maybe I'm spending a little too much time with the kids. But no, I think that's a good perspective, and I appreciate that. So it's been a few years now since you were replaced Representative Necritz. Won an election, you're going to be reelected again here. What made you interested in that? Why state rep? For those that don't know you well, tell us why you wanted to be a state representative.
I ask myself that every day. I was looking to get involved with some things locally. I was looking at some of the school board and some other things, and I got involved with our community relations commission here in Northbrook. I was approached to do this by a good friend of mine, Tracy Katzmull, who's the head of the Northfield Democrats, and also I think the school board president of District 28 here in Northbrook. And she asked me, this is something I'd be interested in, because they were recruiting someone to replace Elaine. And it was one of these situations where it's like, I think sometimes when an opportunity kind of shows up, you got to kind of look and see the bigger picture of it. And, this is a family decision. And I think that one of the things that people in my job will tell you is that this is not just about me. This is about my wife and my kids, and, about the fact that, that we're somewhat in the public spotlight now. I mean, again, look, I'm not an egomaniac here thinking that the world follows me around. As a matter of fact, usually people have no idea who the hell I am or what the hell I do. But the point is that I think in the terms of what this job involves, it's a life changer. And you'll see your name in the paper, or, I'll be on a podcast like this, or, a variety of things where it becomes such a different world that we live in. So, it's exciting at times. I mean, I think that for those of you that haven't been to Springfield, our Capitol building is just one of the most breathtaking places in the country. I mean, it's just beautiful. And take a perspective back is, so the chamber that I got my political start in, because this is my first real political thing, that's where Abraham Lincoln got his political start. I mean, it's just, you take a step back and realize, our greatest president got his start in the chamber I did. And then across the hall. So now remember, President Lincoln didn't serve in the building I'm in now. He served in the old Capitol, which you can still see, but he served in my chamber. But across the hall from me in the Senate chamber, that's where Barack Obama cut his teeth. I mean, you're talking about, the guy that literally, began the civil rights process in Abraham Lincoln, to a man who really was the poster child, the guy about civil rights, where we finally got to a place where we elected an African American to be our first African American president, came out of the Illinois legislature. So, I mean, to put that in perspective, it's just incredible to think about who's been in that building and who's done those things. It's unbelievable to think that.
That's such a great statement and a great summary of that, because it is definitely one of the most breathtaking state capitals that I've been in. Beautiful building, but also the context of it. And I think, forewarning, I might use those statements in our promotions for our next Capitol conference when we do get to come back to the Capitol building in person. So, because I think that's such a great summary, and you said it so well. And I know personally that's my favorite event every year is our Capitol conference, when we get to come down to Springfield and get the members in the Capitol building, and everybody gets to, everyone in Northbrook gets to come talk to you, talk a little bit about, what's happening that day. But not only that, just get to be there and in the moment. I think it's a blast. But I want to turn a little bit here. Obviously, we're in an economic downturn through all this COVID stuff. That's just where we're at. But we're, again, reminded of the importance of the economic importance of the real estate market. Every transaction creates a lot of economic activity, and that spins off into more activity. The National Association of Realtors does an annual study on that economic impact, from the things people go to buy, to preparing their homes, to the transaction itself, to moving into a new home. How many new homes are created after that transaction, so on and so forth. And it's about 16% of the state's gross product. So that's a huge impact. And that chain of activity is important. So give me your take on what the housing market locally and what that means for the local economy.
Well, it's interesting because, again, I one thing I like to do sometimes is just get in my car and drive. It's just get out of the house, and you'll drive around, and you're seeing the signs pop up, and you're seeing sold on pretty much every sign that you see. And the houses that you don't, like, okay, there's major problems with this house. I mean, I think it's funny. One of my neighbors is selling their house, and we kind of know them, and it's like their house has been on the market for a bit. So we're like, okay, something's going on there. So but I think pretty much if your house is in move-in condition, it's going to sell, and it's going to sell fairly quickly. I think people, because of COVID, want to kind of get out of the cramped quarters of the city and kind of have more of the suburban living. So it's really benefited a community like this. I think especially in a town like Northbrook is, and we've talked about off air, on air, I think it's no secret that the cost of living in a place like Northbrook is going to be high. But I think it's also that we have phenomenal schools. We have great community resources. We have all of these things that are incredible in a town like this. So I think people want to be a part of that. But again, it's almost like what's the catch? Well, the catch is its cost of living here is high. But on the flip side, it's a great community to live in. And so I think people are starting to say that, like, I really like the fact that your town's clean, your houses are really nice, and you can get a really nice house for. I mean, it's not inexpensive, but it's certainly not Winnetka, Glencoe, Kenilworth type prices, but you get a lot of bang for your buck in a place like Northbrook. And so I think a lot of people in this want to come to a community like this, especially with young families. So it's a real great credit to some of what our local government does. And I know we're going to have a talk about that in a bit, where we're going to flip that a little bit, but I think at least from a standpoint of how our resources are allocated in a town like this, I mean, I think that, we do see a return on investment. Unfortunately, it's a high investment, but we do see somewhat of a return on investment in a town like this. And that's, I think, the biggest selling point. I'm a former teacher. My wife and I lived in Buffalo Grove when we first met. Buffalo Grove is a great community too. It's in my district. Obviously, it's a great community. We decided to come back to Northbrook because we decided it was in our best interest to, we thought it would be nicer to kind of be closer to my folks and things like that. But again, there's so many great communities around here that it's really nice to have that.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I think you hit on something there with the the costs here, and affordable housing and housing affordability is a theme throughout Illinois. And Illinois Realtors recently announced that they're going to seek passage of a legislative housing package in the General Assembly's fall veto session. The special housing package is intended to give policymakers like yourself a collection of straightforward, immediate solutions to the state's worsening housing shortage. Policies in the bill include property tax and income tax incentives for the creation or rehabilitation of affordable housing units, 5-year reallocation of transfer tax proceeds to increase the state's funding to the Affordable Housing Trust, and elimination of local prohibitions on accessory dwelling units. That's kind of the general gist of the housing package. But I'd like to know your thoughts on this and, other policies you think are kind of common sense approaches to affordable housing.
It's a very difficult conversation, I think, for a lot of us, because obviously, we don't want to have restrictive housing policies. We want to give everyone an opportunity to live in a community like a Northbrook or a Glenview or a Buffalo Grove or some of these communities. But then on the flip side of it, one of the challenges becomes is, well, how do you make that happen? And so obviously the conversations around affordable housing come up, and I've heard this from several people in the area here, both on the pro and con side. It's not like this is a cut and dry issue. So I think when people hear the word affordable housing, the first thought is, well, what does that involve, and who does that bring in? And so it's one of those situations where you can see it from both sides. And obviously, again, we want to create economic opportunities. And certainly if we have a way to do that in a way that doesn't impact our communities would be great. But I think that the fear is that it's going to be one of these things that looks great on paper, but then the reality of it is it just isn't what we thought it would be. So I would rather do this in a comprehensive, collaborative way with groups like, you guys and some of the advocates for affordable housing, so we can come to a compromise. I think that's, because we dealt with that in the spring. There were some bills around affordable housing that, and again, I don't want to throw any of my colleagues under the bus, but I think it was one of these situations where there was a bill put out there. It was a pretty comprehensive, controversial bill. And the person who was working on it was not willing to compromise with other sides. And I think that is a great lesson in what we do, is that if you want to make a change, I think we're all not, opposed to it, but it has to be done in a way that's not going to hinder development. It's not going to hinder economic opportunity. It's not going to damage the communities that it goes to. And I think that comes through collaborative conversations. And so my hope is when we discuss policies like this, is that, you guys have a seat at the table. Your organization is certainly one of the more visible ones in Springfield. I think it's been, you guys certainly aren't shy when there's a problem. And I think that helps us a lot. And I think that's part of this process, is we just have to make sure that everyone has a seat at the table on this one. I mean, and look, I think what's the saying go, that everyone feels a little bit screwed in a negotiation. Well, I think that's, one of the things that's going to have to happen here, is that everyone's going to have to give a little bit. And what we learned last spring was on some of the bills, on the bill in particular that was going to give relief to, renters, was that there was not that willingness. And it really caused, damages to a bill that could have been great. And I guess that's the part that frustrated me, is like, look, we want to help people. I don't think I don't think any of us say, like, look, I don't want to throw people out of their homes. I mean, during this time, the home is our comfort place. We don't want to take that away from people. We don't want to have people out on the streets. We don't want to do that. But at the same time, landlords do have bills to pay too. And it's like, just because you have the stereotype of the bad landlords and this, that, and the other, there's a lot of tremendously wonderful landlords out there that really love their tenants and do what they can to help them. So, it's like to box everyone in because, it's a tough economic time, isn't really fair. So my hopes, and I think you guys really are great at advocating on issues, is that, we all come to the table and find an answer that works for everybody.
That's a great perspective. And yeah, I can attest to the absolutely wonderful housing providers that are out there throughout Illinois. I've had the opportunity to work with several of them, and just phenomenal people that go so far above and beyond to help people. But with that, are any closing thoughts before we sign off? Anything else you want to throw out there?
Listen, I mean, again, I think it's a situation where, we're the challenges that we're going to face, the things that we're going to deal with. I think as a community, as a state, as a country, we don't know how this ends, and I think that's what's probably the scariest part for most of us is, I mean, we just don't know. I mean, we're dealing with a disease we don't fully understand still, and the concept of, well, we'll create a vaccine or we'll do this or we'll do that is all great, except it actually has to work. That's the part we leave out. So we're going to have to work together as communities on a lot of these challenges, and those of us that are in a position to that are able to weather this better than other groups of people are going to have to be there for others. And I think that's what we're seeing. I think we're seeing a lot of that stuff, but it's going to be a very interesting few months, I think, coming up just as a state, because, again, we just don't know how this ends. And that's the part that makes it the most difficult.
Yeah. No, Representative, I appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule. It's always a pleasure to chat and catch up. Thanks for being here with us today.
Anytime. And just real quick, if you don't mind, I'd love to hear from you, and I'm always responding to people all the time. You mind if I give out my web address and email and stuff?
Absolutely.
Okay, so my email address is JC, letter J, letter C, at repcarroll.com, repcarroll.com. And that's my website too, repcarroll.com. And my office number is 847-229-5499. And so please reach out anytime. And just real quick for you too, by the way, is a service that we offer in our office. We are notaries. So if you ever need something notarized on the fly, we don't charge. Come on in. We're happy to notarize for you.
That is great to know. Notarization is always a big one in our world.
And our friend Wayne Poprocki's taken us up on that like 2 or 3 times already. So he knows it's a great service. And please, if you ever need something notarized, we're there. We'll be happy to do it for you.
Excellent. Well, Representative, again, thank you for your time. Thanks for joining us today. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that does it for this episode of GADcast. If you have comments or topics you'd like us to discuss, feel free to email me, joe@nsbar.org. Until next episode, be well, everyone.